Hello, brothers and sisters. It's a new week. We thank you very much for watching our show titled Speak of Africa. All those who are subscribing, we say special thank you. All those who are viewing and sharing the show, we encourage you to continue sharing. We started this show because we wanted to give you a voice. We wanted you to know what is happening. So many organs exist in the world today. They share news. But we are different because we try to focus on geopolitics. We look at Africa in a geopolitical context. Then we look at the way world events affect Africa. Then we tailor the topic for the day. For today, we are looking at Russian influence. For many months now, we've been telling you about the scramble for Africa, foreign influence, Africa's problems. Africa's problems are not really intrinsic. They are not really coming from within. A lot of African problems come from outside, which is why we always focus on external factors. But we do not ignore internal factors because we know that it takes two to tango. Africa will not be in trouble if the sons and daughters of Africa are not conniving with foreigners to steal the resources of Africa. Which is why for the show of today, we're going to focus on Russia. Russia reigns in Africa. We don't really mean that Russia has conquered Africa. Because when we say Russia reigns in Africa, people may feel like, oh, Russia has conquered Africa. We're exaggerating. We're not exaggerating. We're simply saying that there is a lot of influence. Africa's main concern is lack of sovereignty. Africa cannot function like an independent country or an independent continent. There are always external guys coming in to do something which is always not in the interest of Africa. And pretty much what is happening in Africa is always in the interest of Russia. It is in the political interest of Russia, it is in the economic interest of Russia, and it is in the social interest of Russia. On the political side, Russia is really making its influence felt. Whenever Russia notices that an African country is having problems with democracy, they step in and they try to act as a catalyst in the experiment of democracy in Africa, especially since the arrival of Vladimir Putin. Putin has focused a lot of attention on Africa. Whenever he sees that democracy is not working in an African country, that's when he tries to come in. It's like you have a neighbor. Whenever he knows that you are quarreling with your wife, he comes in to wreak havoc and break the marriage. That's basically what Russia does. And this is very, very good. When you look at what is happening in a lot of countries, we start with Burkina Faso. You saw what happened with Ibrahim Traoré, right? Damiba was supporting the French. When Traoré came in, Traoré is a Russian asset. Even though I know a lot of people love Traoré, but let's say the truth. When America loses, Russia gains. So Russia is not coming to Africa to do things for free for Africans, which is what we want many Africans to understand. Russia is a country. The country has interests. When Russia is in Africa, Russia is looking after Russian interests. Russia is not there for charity. Russia is not Santa Claus, okay? Santa Claus does not exist. Even my little girls, it didn't take them long to understand that Santa Claus is fiction. So some of our viewers may be deceived to think that Russia has never been a colonial power, so whatever they are doing, they are against the anti-imperialists. Yes, we love the Russian anti-imperialist rhetoric. But what we're saying is that rhetoric is propaganda. It's propaganda meant to paint the Western guys black. I'm not saying the Western guys are nice guys. I'm simply saying that Russia is exploiting the disaffection of the people of Africa for the West to promote its own agenda. You see this happening in Burkina Faso. You see this happening in Mali with Assimi Goïta. You see this happening in Niger with Abdurrahman Tiani. And even in Chad, you see this happening. Most of these countries used to be former colonies of France. They are falling down just like dominoes, one after another. Look at even Gabon. In the case of Gabon, it is a palace coup because the French did not want to lose Gabon. They were afraid that Russia would take over Gabon, so they had to get Brice Oligui Nguema to take over from his cousin, Ali Bongo. Look at what happened in Guinea. That's also another example of a French coup. They did not want Guinea to fall into the hands of Russia, so they had to step in to take out the president. This is something that continues. You look at Togo. If they realize that the guy is tilting too much away from the French, they will bring him to order. But Russia is not relenting. Russia is making efforts. Even with the show of today, we say Russia reigns in Africa. Is this good or bad? On the one hand, it may be good, because if you are my enemy and you are friends with somebody, what do I consider that person? My friend's enemy is my friend, right? That's basically the way it works. So whenever Russia realizes that you are not getting along with another country with the West, they try to befriend you. Those are the power dynamics we see on the world stage. And you can see this happening. Russia even uses social media to wage a campaign against the West. And the campaign is very, very effective. They have narratives. When you look at somebody like Ibrahim Traoré, trolls in Ghana are always making stories about the West. They will just pick stories, put them all over social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You see a lot of images of Ibrahim Traoré like a hero. We know we love his politics. We love his propaganda. When he talks about sovereignty for Africans, that's good. But Russia is doing a good job. So what does Russia gain for doing the work it's doing in Burkina Faso? Burkina Faso opens the treasury of the country, the resources of the country, the natural resources of the country go to Russia. So Russia benefits. So Russia is not there just to be a nice guy because they are anti-imperialists. They are anti-imperialists, but they still want to benefit from the resources in Burkina Faso. The same thing happens when Russia took over Mali. It was not really a conquest, like in the colonial sense, where a colonial power comes to Africa and seizes the country and runs the country. But today, everything is really subtle. It's what I call soft power. They get guys from Mali, like Assimi Goïta, but they manage them remotely, like a television set. That's what they do. Vladimir Putin has switched gears. Before, we had the Wagner Group taking place in Africa. But Russia has its intelligence service, the Federal Intelligence Service, SVR. That's what is really used. Because since the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin in a plane crash, Russia is now replacing the forces of Prigozhin with Africa Core, Africa Politology. That's a new thing we see happening in Russia. And when you look at social media and most of the news channels, Vladimir Putin is running this operation right from the Kremlin, from Moscow. That's where their Africa policy is engineered and implemented, from Moscow. And you can see the way Vladimir Putin is inviting a lot of African leaders. Even the guy who just took power in Madagascar, Vladimir Putin is inviting him. We know Russia is almost finished. How dependable can the African people be on Russia? That's a question a lot of people have been asking me. Because that's what Russia was planning to do in Ukraine. But for almost 4 years now, Russia doesn't know what to do. We hear Russia is having a lot of losses in Ukraine. In fact, Russia is using its influence in Africa to recruit a lot of Africans to go and fight for Russia in Ukraine. I see so many stories about Africans protesting against Russia because a son or daughter of theirs went to the war front in Ukraine and died. Most of the parents did not even know that their children were in Ukraine. Sometimes Russia would talk to African countries. They will open embassies in more African countries, tell them they're going to give African support, scholarships for the students to study in Russia. Before you know it, these students end up in Ukraine fighting for Russia. So this is very, very sad. We've seen pictures of so many Africans dying in Russia, especially Kenya. Kenya is a very good example. We see Africans from Kenya going to fight in Russia. Even La République du Cameroun, that's another country where the Russian influence is growing. We saw pictures of Chantal Biya and her octogenarian husband. These folks are also tilting away from the West. They're moving into the arms of China and Russia. And Russia is welcoming them with open arms. You see, I saw the pictures of Paul Biya celebrating his so-called 93rd birthday. Interestingly, when you observe his pants are all wet. So which means the guy is still peeing in that pan. I suspect the catheter that they're putting on him is not really well placed, so it keeps leaking. Leak. It keeps leaking. So this is, I don't know about the kind of healthcare we have in Cameroon. Because a catheter, if it is well placed, it doesn't have to be leaking the way it leaks. You can even see the wetness on the guy's pants. He wears a blue suit, but you can see where the water has soaked the pant completely. People who went to the celebration to the palace were really complaining that the odor, you sit around Biya, you can really smell the odor of urine. But that's what happens. For the first time, we see that in Cameroon, 3 soldiers who kill Ambazonians in Gabon by using proxy Fulanis. 3 of those soldiers were sentenced for the first time in La République du Cameroon. Can you believe it? Cameroon is sentencing soldiers for killing 21 people in Gabon. We've spoken about the Gabon massacre on this show many times. I will never forget a picture I saw. A guy was holding his baby who was burnt to ashes. The guy was still holding the baby and crying. As a father, it hurt me so bad. I could not really believe it. But for the first time, the government of Paul Biya allowed the military courts to imprison these soldiers, 3 of them. But initially they had said, oh no, soldiers did not commit any crimes. But after a lot of pressure, because we get these stories, we share them on social media so that your average person in the world gets to know what is happening in La République du Cameroon. When we did that, finally, the government of La République du Cameroon has confirmed that these soldiers actually killed 21 citizens in Gabon, including children and women, young children and women, burnt to ashes with the connivance of the Fulanis. That's what happened. So you see that that's what is happening. Then, of course, you see that in the Central African Republic, the Russian influence is there too. And we've been talking about it. So the Russian influence is big. Then even the Orthodox Church, Russia is using the Orthodox Church to grow its influence in Africa. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm simply drawing this to your attention. But I'm asking you, do you think Russian influence should continue? I'm not saying Russia is a bad person or Russia is a good person. I'm simply saying, think about it. Is it noble in the mind for us to be dealing with countries that don't allow us to be sovereign? Those are the questions we need to be asking as Africans. Can we not have the freedom to run our own affairs on our own? Are we then surprised why Africa is not moving forward? Africa is not moving forward because we allow foreigners to dictate to us, to control us. We don't have sovereignty. So the whole concept of nationhood in Africa is a farce. It's fake. It doesn't exist. African countries cannot make decisions on their own. They have to ask their masters from the West before they make decisions. If this cannot end, then Africa will continue having problems. Because in order for us to be free, we need to be independent politically. But the way democracy has been set up, we keep repeating it on this show every week. Democracy is failing in Africa, even though it succeeds everywhere else. Greece Britain, America, but in Africa it's failing. So Vladimir Putin of Russia is taking advantage of this failure of democracy to grow his influence in Africa. That's what is happening. And it's happening every day. Okay? Whenever there's problem in Africa with democracy, Vladimir Putin is ready for a solution. Because he's been fighting for a unipolar world. Okay? He doesn't like the bipolar world where you had just Russia and America. He wants other countries to get involved so that America should not be a unipolar power. So that America should not be alone as a superpower. He himself says, when the Soviet Empire collapsed, that was the greatest catastrophe of the 21st century. And he is fixated on the idea of restoring the former glory of the Soviet Empire. Will this ever happen? We should be thinking about restoring the old glory of the African Empire. That's what we should be thinking about on this show. And we're telling you, please, let's think about the old African Empire. Let's rebuild it. You've heard of the empire of the Songhai Empire, the Empire of Mali, and all the great pharaohs of Africa. So let's think about bringing Africa back. Let's make Africa great again. That's what I will tell you. I'm not Donald Trump, but I believe that we should make Africa great again. We have to restore the old glory of Africa. Because when I look at the map, even South Africa, which we think is a really developed country, we're having issues. We're having issues. I know one of the big stories in South Africa today has to do with the son of Robert Mugabe, I think Bamil Mugabe, the youngest son. He got himself into trouble and they said he killed a gardener. They arrested him and we'll have the story for you. So there's a whole lot of stories in Africa. Then of course, even in Sudan, which we mentioned to you last time, this week we saw a picture of Delgado and Yoweri Museveni. Delgado of the RSF militia was in Uganda to meet with Yoweri Museveni. What were they talking about? Well, Yoweri Museveni was saying they were talking about peace. But you can see that there can be no peace in Sudan because a lot of foreign powers, including Russia, are making it difficult for peace to reign in Sudan. These two generals, al-Burhan and Delgado, they are tearing this country apart. So many people have died. Every country that calls itself a superpower has its own interests. But what about the interests of the Sudanese people? Nobody cares about the Sudanese people. They feel they are poor people, so they don't really deserve anything. So when we look at this, we really feel bad for the Sudanese people. So but when we see this image of Delgado flying to Uganda to meet with Mugabe, we ask ourselves, what is really happening in this picture? These guys are killing people, but they don't care. They are killing their own people for their own sport. When are Africans going to rise up, going to wake up to know that killing your own people is very bad? Killing your own people because you want resources is not good. When we do this, we really make ourselves become the pagans of Africa. So that's not good. So we've gone a long way. We've talked about Russian influence on this show. And there's some newspapers. We just discovered the Continent newspaper. Okay, what inspired me to really look into this paper called The Continent is because I had a friend in the late 80s called Dominic Ntube. He was publishing a paper in Washington, D.C. titled The Continent. The paper came out monthly and he discussed Africa. I used to help him work on this paper for many years. So the first time when I saw that title, The Continent, I thought maybe somebody is doing the same thing Dominic is doing. May Dominic so rest in peace. But I'm drawing attention to this newspaper, The Continent. I'll be able to look at this paper in depth because I'm going to read it. I'm going to look at most of the articles. Then I will try to find out the Russian connection. Because as you can see, Russia spends a lot of time delivering fake information in the African news space. They come up with a lot of stories. At one point, we even told you, Russia had trolls in Ghana. They were just sitting there manufacturing all these lies, feeding them all over the world using social media. So when you consume this news, be very, very circumspect, because a lot of time the news is not for real. It's fake news. So we're going to let you know if Russia is going to continue with this practice. Of course, why would they stop? Because that's how they are able to fight against the West. But as you can see, I know even those who are too pro-Russia, Russia should be a reliable partner. My biggest frustration with Russia is that Russia is never really committed to its partner. Look at Bashir Assad. Well, Russia allowed him to fall. Patrice Lumumba, what happened? So Russia is a very unreliable partner. So I'm asking people like Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and General Twani to be very careful, because Russia is not really reliable. So don't sleep and rely on Russia 100%, because Russia has always proven to be a very unreliable partner. The West, at least, struggles to have partners and stay with them to the end. But Russia always leaves you in the middle of the stream, so you drown. So when I see people supporting Russia, I ask. Then, of course, I take you to Nigeria. In Nigeria, somebody shared some stories with us concerning the illegal mining with carbon monoxide coming out and killing over 37 people. Why is this taking place? Because people are looking for ways to make a living. So we say once again, Mr. Bola Tinubu, as much as you are spending a lot of time on your re-election in 2027, focus your energy also on producing good jobs for Nigerians. Make it such that crime does not pay, so that Nigerians should gain employment in legal sectors. If you can do this, we really appreciate it. So we've come to the end of this show, but we're asking you, we've been talking about Russian influence in Africa. What do you think? Is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? They said nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's what my philosopher professor used to say. So what do you think? Do you think Russia's influence in Africa is positive or negative? Go to this video and write your comment, because we need those comments. The more we see your comments, the more we reply. Bye-bye. May God bless you.
Selling a service or a product? Need buyers? Use the African Nation TV as a channel to reach many viewers. Act now and call Prince Ojong at 240-350-1131. That's 240-350-1131. Act today.